When I was a kid, my dad was a Presbyterian minister in Dallas, Texas, and we used to come out to Ghost Ranch, which is only 40 miles from this spot right here, almost every summer in the 50s, and go to church retreats there. And I was just beginning to write music. I had made up music ever since I could reach the piano, but I was beginning to try to notate it. I was maybe 12, and I remember getting home and playing some of those pieces and being astonished at the color and space that somehow seemed to get trapped in my childish notation. And I swore then that I had to live in a place like that, that would open me up and create space and color within me. And of course we forget these things, and I went off to various colleges, various states, and finally it dawned on me that I wanted to return. So in 71, January 1 of 71, I returned to Albuquerque, deciding that maybe it was time to get back to the place that I had been so enthused by in the beginning. When my oldest son was only 2 years old, my wife took him for a 2-week trip back to New York State where her relatives were to show him off. And suddenly I was a bachelor again, and I hadn't been to Chaco. I had been to a lot of other Anasazi sites and had been taken with them and interested in them. But I went out there and spent several days by myself and was totally blown away, not only by the accomplishments of the Anasazi, which are truly remarkable. A lot of people do not understand the scope, the depth of what they achieved and when they achieved it. The feelings I got in Chaco were nothing like anything I'd ever felt anywhere else. It was like suddenly sticking your finger into an electrical socket. I mean, it was just so powerful. The connection with the cosmos was just like unbelievable. And so that was when I started my famous Chaco period. Back in the 70s, when I was finishing a master's in composition at UNM, one of my classmates was George Willink, who is a very good buddy of mine. George knew that I was a Chaco nut, that I was writing a lot of music about Chaco, and I was traveling out there a lot. And at that time, in the early 70s, what is now US 550 was New Mexico 44, which was a little 2-lane winding road, and you'd get behind a truck, and it would take 4 hours to get from Albuquerque to Chaco, and there's, as you know, almost no place to stay. If you could camp. He said, why don't you come stay with my mom? We just built her this beautiful place where she's going to retire. So I came out here to this house, beautiful adobe house. They were just finishing it. The first night I spent here, we camped out right here. There was no roof yet. And we looked up at the stars and had a fire in the Kiva fireplace. And of course I fell in love with the view and the whole thing. But she lived here 5 years and then passed away, and George and I couldn't, either one of us afford to keep the house. We had small families and no money, and so it was sold. And then many years later, 25 years actually after her death, and I came up here and looked, and it was occupied. Tried to forget about it, couldn't. Went home, called George, says, give me the name of the lady that bought the house. So I called her. And she said, you know, there's someone in it right now, but they're getting ready to leave. If you're interested, come look at it. So I came up and met her and bought the house in 2005 and spent the last 4 years fixing it up. There's something about this valley, there's something about the view here and the ambience of the place. I noticed that in the 5 years since I've been coming up here and writing music, that I have never been dry here. I've never had a time when I couldn't come up with something. And it just blows me away that I have been that fortunate to find a place not too dissimilar to the one I said I wanted when I was a kid, and which is only a few miles away from where that was. It's kind of strange how all that works out.